Okay, we're live. Testing, testing. Today on Quality Time with Family Ties, we learn this isn't the end of the beginning, it's the beginning of the end.
3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, welcome to Quality Time with Family Ties. I am sitting here in toasty Los Angeles. Did you know it's toasty in Los Angeles?
No, why? What's going on? What's the weather?
We've been toasty. All of a sudden, we went from really cold weather last week to summertime. We've been in the 90s this week here in the Valley.
Good God.
Yeah, so
Guys, welcome back. We're talking about weather. You know who's back.
So what's your weather like?
It's very schizophrenic, like this episode. It's been snowstorms and then like 50-degree days back and forth.
Wow, that's confusing.
Yeah, so everyone's sick. It's great.
Boy, this episode is the first episode of the final season of Family Ties.
Something, something. The boys are back in town.
Boy, I'll tell you. It's called It Happened One Night, and it started like it had a real story to tell. And very quickly, I'll make the pun, the story ran out of gas. Or power, steam.
Corey, before we go too far, let's talk about the movie that the title's based on. It Happened One Night.
It starred Claudette Colbert and Clark Gable. I believe it won the Oscar for Best Picture and is one of the rare comedies ever to win the Oscar for Best Picture.
Yeah. And it invented the idea of men not wearing undershirts.
Really? Was that the first movie in which a man took a shirt off and didn't have an undershirt on?
Exactly. Clark Gable did. And so it became the style after that to just not wear an undershirt.
Wow, that's crazy. That prior to that, all men wore undershirts.
Yeah. And not only, this is like where sort of all romantic comedy film plots come from, where they hate each other, and it's a road trip movie, which is where this title tonight comes from. And then over the road trip, they begin to fall in love.
And is this the movie with the famous grapefruit scene? Is this where somebody gets shoved a grapefruit in someone's face, or is that a different movie?
I think it's this, but I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. No,
and it's Frank Capra's first film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was a Frank Capra film.
Yeah.
But film, I've never seen It Happen One Night, or I've seen only clips from it. It seemed quite charming. An expression I couldn't really use to describe this episode of Family Ties because it fades so quickly. Let me tell you right off the bat, Mallory, Alex, and Jennifer look great.
They do. They all do. And Alex, Michael J. Fox finally got rid of that stupid ass mullet.
Absolutely. First thing I wrote down, no mullet. Jennifer's hair isn't poofy anymore. It's styled nice. She looks grown up. She looks pretty. And Mallory looks more mature and womanly. The three kids look great. Andy hasn't changed significantly. Meredith Baxter Burney's hair is a little shorter. And Michael Gross hasn't changed considerably. And Nick looks sort of the same when we meet him. Lauren's got a different haircut when we meet her.
Yeah, I think so. She's only in this episode for a little bit, which was surprising, I have to say.
It was. I was surprised and delighted all at the same time. Because my only thought was, God, I hope Courtney Cox took acting lessons during hiatus.
No, I mean, we know, spoiler alert, she sucked on Friends. So I don't
think trying to leave it a little ambiguous for anybody who might not have followed her career. Boy, we start, and when obviously this episode premiered in September. Was it the election year? Was it was 88 an election year?
Yeah, I mean 88 was an election year, but it must have been right up. I mean,
it was September of 88, and it was Bush versus Dukakis in the national presidential election.
Yeah, ever since 2006, we've had 2-year-long presidential elections where the primary begins 2 years out from election year. It's so quaint back in 1988 that this family is not like broken up over the election.
Right. The election season didn't go so long that they're no longer speaking with each other.
Exactly. Yes, let's talk about this election. So it's George Bush and Michael Dukakis. George Bush was the vice president at the time. Dukakis was what, the governor of Massachusetts?
Governor of Massachusetts, very liberal governor, always considered sort of an intellectual and and someone with zero personality.
That, just like John Kerry after, like all
Absolutely.
those.
Both those Massachusetts guys.
Yeah. And it was also the election where Lee Atwater did the, what's his name? Who was the ad campaign that was very racist?
I don't know if I remember this.
Oh, Corey, be careful. You're doing the,
Oh, I'm
covering up the.
Yes. I don't know if I remember Lee Atwater.
Lee Atwater came from the Nixon years, and he did. Here, wait a second. I'm going to look it up. Just edit all this up, Bryant. Bush election ad Lee. Willie Horton.
That I remember. Okay.
So yeah, so 1988 was the election year where Lee Atwater did the Willie Horton ad, which when everyone talks about how high-minded George H.W. Bush was, he hired Lee Atwater and did the Willie Horton ad where a guy was let on prison release in Massachusetts, and then he ended up killing someone, raping someone, I'm not sure what. And they put it on Dukakis to say, would you kill all prisoners if they raped your wife? And it was like this ridiculous campaign. And the places that they put Michael Dukakis, and it made him look like a wimp. And that's one of the reasons that he lost the election in '88.
And so we start right away with sort of Andy holding a Bush campaign poster that's been sharpied up.
Yeah. They gave him the devil horns and the cigars or whatever. And
we of course learn very quickly that Alex is clearly a Bush fan, having been the vice president for Reagan, and mom and dad are supporters of Dukakis and seem to have a lot of Dukakis literature upstairs.
Yeah, all those Dukakis books that were worth nothing before the election and after the election.
Yeah, the Dukakis literature is offered twice in this scene.
I also liked how much they really they made a joke about Iran-Contra, and the audience applauded. Where it was like a slam of George Bush, and the audience was like, "Yeah, fuck that dude." They went on to elect him, but that was interesting.
They did make an Iran-Contra joke. They called it the Iran-Contra affair, and Mallory was, of course, fascinated with someone having an affair. And then it was changed to scandal, and then prank, I believe, was the last one.
Yeah. The affair thing, it was really prescient that, like, 10 years on, that would be the big thing.
Right. Isn't that funny?
She's very ahead of her time.
I love the way that Stephen and Elise exit this scene, or exit going on the camping trip, under the guise of getting away from the media hype.
Now, recently, about a month ago, there was a New York Times op-ed or it was an article about a guy who lives in Ohio, who, because of the election of Trump, he was so upset by this, he went into self-imposed media exile in Ohio, where he's so white and male and privileged that he didn't have to follow the news because it didn't affect him. And the New York Times thought that was very, I don't know, quaint or appealing of a story to tell. Fuck that guy. And so I thought it was funny that, these Ohioan white people were doing the same thing in '88.
They sort of announced that whenever they wanted to get away from media hype in the past, they would go on a family camping trip. And they sort of suggested this weekend they all go on a family camping trip. And of course, none of the teenage and older children, Alex, Mallory, and Jennifer, want to make it. They all have other plans. Andy has no choice. He's going to go. And so mom and dad decide they're going to go on a camping trip without the kids.
The one thing I want to say is that all of the adult children, or, older children, they have reasonable reasons for not going. It's not that they're just being jerks.
They do have reasonable reasons for not going. And also, they make it quite clear, both parents and children, and I think this was at least smart of them to set this up, that they have very pleasant memories of their family camping trips as kids.
Right.
That they just, and I think that goes hand in hand with what you just said. They're not being jerks. They really enjoyed camping, with going on camping trips and going to the cabin with their parents. They just have other plans this weekend, things that are more important because they're older and they have their own lives.
Yeah, Jennifer has a test she needs to study for or something, or a paper she needs to write. And then Mallory and Alex have their own stuff that they need to do.
And so we leave at the end of this scene with Mom and Dad and Andrew leaving on a camping trip, or planning to go on a camping trip. Next scene, we open with Nick arriving in the living room. Now, did you notice Nick, season 7, episode 1, enters and gets entrance applause? Lauren, not a peep from the audience.
That was amazing. Yeah, it was, because I mean, it wouldn't have said anything, except she didn't get that.
That's the only reason why I'm mentioning it. It was like, wait a minute. She didn't get any entrance applause, and the audience went crazy, like Nick was being played by Rickles.
I know. I mean, we love Nick here at Quality Time with Family Ties, but if he walked through a door, I wouldn't get excited.
And yet this audience, season 7, episode 1, gives Nick recognition applause. Just, hey, it's Nick. Nick is back.
Wow. I mean,
ejaculate when Skippy appears sometime this season. I just thought that was amazing. Who's wearing a Bush t-shirt? Oh, is Alex wearing a Bush t-shirt?
Yeah, I mean, he has a back and forth with Lauren in the first scene about the Dukakis shirt that she's wearing.
He's wearing a Dukakis shirt, so he's wearing a Bush t-shirt in the second scene.
Right.
I love the way Nick describes him and Mallory as Mallory is the brains behind the couple. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was good. It was cute.
You know, you texted me that there were 2 good jokes, and you know what? There were a couple of good jokes. Early in this episode, you're right. There were a couple of good jokes, but we are just about to hit the skids in just a moment.
Literally, figuratively, it's all true. Yeah.
And that's why up to this point, it seemed like, wow, this might be all right. This might be a little comeback here. Yeah. And boy, it just got so bad. So the 3 kids, Alex and Jennifer and Mallory, I'm sorry, the 3, Mom and Dad and Andrew, leave on their camping trip, leaving Alex, Mallory, and Alex at home. And as soon as the door slams, they start to feel guilty.
Yeah, which is fine. I think that sort of like internal obstacle for the kids is totally fine. But at the same time, they established in scene 1 that the 3 of them had stuff to do.
Absolutely. And that's the whole thing is, story-wise, we're still just fine up to this point. It's the next scene and the act break and thereafter that becomes almost suicide-inducing on this part. There are two long moments in this episode, both in the second act, that I truly considered doing damage to myself to end it. Just please end it now. We start this next scene in the family car. It's Alex is driving, and Mallory and Nick are cuddling in the back seat, and Jennifer is navigating using her map from Greek mythology.
Boom! See, this is the big reveal, is that they're getting lost in the woods going up to the camp, and Jennifer brought her wrong book. Now, the first joke that I think Family Ties has ever written where it's actually funny is that Alex is driving, and Jennifer says, "Alex, can you go a little bit faster?" And he's like, "Hey, other people around us can go as fast as they want." And she's like, "We just got passed by an old lady." And he's like, "She can drive to her heart's content." And she's like, "She was walking." I thought that was a good one.
The joke. I did too. Thought it was fun. But Jennifer delivered it well. It was a good moment.
And then the other joke, can I throw in the other one?
Yeah, please.
As they're bored, as they're driving and they're lost, Mallory says, "Let's play 20 questions." And I thought to myself, you know, it would be awesome, because Nick and Mallory just know each other and they're so perfect together that he doesn't even have to guess. He just knows what she's thinking. And then they did do that. And I loved it. I thought that was a great joke.
Absolutely. And it's simple and it was clean. And they even referred to it later on in a callback. So they're clearly lost. They don't know where the hell they are. They don't have a map. Nick and Mallory connect over Mickey Mouse. That's too. The person they thought of was Mickey Mouse, which is perfect for the two of them to be thinking of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
And of course, now that they've lost their map, what's the next thing that can happen? Let's raise the stakes just a little bit. Now the car breaks down. It's the generator. It's not working. It ain't going anywhere. They're stuck, and they're at their act break.
Yeah. Now, before the act break, the one last thing I want to say is we see the car. This is the first time we've ever seen, like, the Keatons in a car.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as, you know, Alex drove to go to Ellen in central Pennsylvania, but it was all B-roll footage. This is the first time that they have, like, a car set up. And and the car that when they pull up into frame when the car breaks down is, you said, Corey, a Volvo.
That's what it looks like. It looks like a really safe car for your kids to be driving.
Yeah. So obviously the Keatons have at least 2 cars. We just learned that in this episode.
Which we've commented on many times. Do they even have 1 car?
Yeah. And so with that, do you have anything before we go to commercial?
No, just it's all downhill from here.
Yeah. With that, we'll be right back. And we're back.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
so
is
up until this moment, things were pretty good.
Pretty good. And now this show that was chugging along at a fairly steady clip completely comes to a standstill. And they have their first total logic issues here. Now, I know logistically why they did it, but there is no reason on God's earth why anybody would suggest let's sleep outside of the car where it's cold instead of inside of the car where the 4 of us, including a couple that is romantic and another couple that just happen to be brother and sister, could stay warm by putting their jackets, and they all had down jackets, around all of them in the car, heat or no heat. It's going to be warmer than lying on the ground out of doors. It made no sense for the constant complaining.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the first logic problem of many. That they just constantly stay outside. Obviously, it's a TV show. We can't have them sit in the car, I guess. I don't know. I think we could.
I know. I'm saying it the same way. I guess they couldn't do it. I'm not really sure why they couldn't do it. You can certainly put cameras in windows and cameras in cars. It just logistically, I guess, for a multi-camera show, it wouldn't have been great for the audience.
I assume that's the reason.
Was taken into consideration. But boy, they're stuck for the night. It's cold outside, and Alex and Jennifer decide they're going to go for help. So they start to walk away, and then we have this sort of kind of weird, long-ish scene of Mallory and Nick, where they talk about, Nick sort of talks about his admiration for the relationship that Mallory and Alex have for each other, how close they are.
Yeah, it's like he says, you two make fun of each other, but deep down, I know that you two love each other, and that's what makes your family so great. Gosh, I wish one day I could have a family as great as your family. So he's shitting on his own family only after we met Dan Hedaya near a few episodes ago.
And they start talking about marriage. They start talking about when they're going to get married and stuff like that.
It honestly feels like the lovers in a commedia play.
It did. It felt like it was the ingenue and the juvenile, and all of a sudden this conversation sort of comes out of nowhere. And Mallory tells Nick that at one time he had said, "It's not totally inconceivable that you could have found somebody worse than Nick."
I mean, a shitty thing for a father to say to a daughter.
Right. And yet Nick is so moved by that, he almost to tears.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, Nick's very moved that he realizes maybe he doesn't hate me as much as I thought he hated me.
And this is, of all of the ongoing jokes or the like recurring gags that Family Ties has, the dumbest recurring joke, more so than Mallory being dumb and Alex making fun of her for it, is the Steven hates Nick.
It's dumb. if they'd ever given him cause to, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Alex and Jennifer, who went to get help, and really just sort of facilitated this long-ass scene between Mallory and Nick, they come back because they find a sign that says it's 50 miles to the next help station. To the next So they come back, and we fade out, and we fade into scene 2, where they're now lying out of doors, sort of trying to sleep the night away.
And this is when they talk about all of the kids that they're going to have and take camping or visit each other and all that kind of stuff. Like, they're like, we feel bad for not going with our parents, and that's natural that kids don't visit anymore and all that kind of stuff.
And then they start talking about, and this made no fucking sense, having kids on a commission basis.
Yeah, so Alex starts trying to inject money into the conversation about visiting, like, Mallory and his, like, the cousins, when these future cousins exist. And he says, apparently Alex doesn't know how supply and demand works. He's like, because he doesn't want to go see Mallory and Nick's kids, he's like, I'm going to charge my kids $50. And then they say something stupid, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to charge my kids $100. It's like, if you charge your kids more, then they're going to want to go see them. If you make it cheaper, then they'll be able to afford the amount to not go.
And this whole long scene about children inspired me to simply write the word "oi" down. Jew that I am. Oi, God, this scene was long. And nothing was happening. And then it morphs into a very wistful talk about mom and dad, and how they miss mom and dad, and they miss camping with mom and dad, and they wish mom and dad was with them. And boy, it would be great if mom and dad were here, and weren't our camping trips with mom and dad great? And hey, Mallory, will you sing the song you always used to sing when we went camping with mom and dad?
And they say, because it was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
This is the part that they really just threw her under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Of which the wheels on it go round and round.
They made her sing 99 bottles of nail polish on the wall, 99 bottles of nail polish. If one of them fall, you go to the mall. 98 bottles of nail polish on the wall.
Whew, it's hilarious. Like we said, there were some funny jokes in this episode.
None in this movie. Yes. No. Boy, right after the nail polish song, all of a sudden, must be only one road up and one road down to the Sandusky camping site, because mom and dad show up in the middle of the night. Now, what's curious to me is they show up in the middle of the night and they don't show up with Andrew. So I don't know where the fuck Andy is.
And not only that, what happens is while they're singing, you hear vroom vroom, and Alex goes, "Oh my gosh, there's a car coming!" And they're like, "Alex, we're singing, you dipshit!" And he's like, "No, shut the fuck up. There's a car." And he does some physical comedy, because anytime a scene's in trouble, Michael J. Fox goes a little bit above and beyond with the physical comedy, trying to save it. And he sort of like is hopping in a sleeping bag, and he almost like falls as an actor.
Hilarious.
And so then it's a dark scene, and like the lighting is terrible in this scene.
Horrible. It's so horrible in this scene.
And as opposed to car lights coming up and lighting the thing because Stephen and Elise are driving up.
It was like somebody was holding like a handheld light in their hand.
Yeah. So Michael Gross and Meredith Baxter just run into the scene. There was no other car set.
There was no other car, and they just had a vroom vroom sound. And those cheap ass people just ran onto the set in this sort of like, we just sort of met on a road where you guys are lost on a mountaintop, and it's so haphazard and ridiculous that I just sort of had to sit there going, "You got to be kidding me!" That they shoehorned this in. They wanted this to happen so bad.
And not only that, there never are better lights in this scene. So when they get reacquainted or reunited, the family, it's all in darkness. Like, it's so poorly lit, and it's 2 minutes long.
It is. It goes on forever, and it's in shadow. It reminded me of the movie Mudbound, which was also the darkest film I'd ever seen in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
I kept on wanting, please, somebody put a light on. It's a movie. Film it with a light on so I can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm an old man and my eyesight's failing, but the fact still remains is I can see. If you put lights on, I can see.
Yeah, it's true. No, I haven't seen it yet. I was watching a different Netflix original this weekend.
What were you watching?
The Wild Wild Country, the documentary series about the Rajneesh in Oregon.
Oh, how was that?
Amazing.
Oh, good.
Corey,
Took a look.
you were a young man back then in the 80s.
No,
Do you remember this being a national story?
not at all. Nope,
It seemed like it was the biggest news story ever, and I don't remember it at all.
not at all.
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay.
And so we go from meeting mom and dad and to our final scene, to our final scene, and I must say, a final scene devoid of a backdoor finish.
It's true. They robbed you of that.
They did, and yet they gave us so much more.
Thank you for saying that. I was like, I hope Corey says so much more.
Oh, they gave us so much more than a backdoor finish. This was, in the 7 seasons we've been doing Family Ties, one of the yuckiest finishes they have ever come up with. This was pure, unadulterated yuck. And I did come up with a new comment for the end of this scene, and it simply says, "Eat me." Because this scene ends, it is the worst ending of any scene we've ever had on this show, ever, ever, ever. The film montage made no sense. There was no reason for it. The song was ridiculous. The harmony was even worse. It was one of the worst moments I've ever seen on this show.
Yeah, I think there's a close second, or at least a distant second, with when she sings "The Times They Are a Changing" in the folk thing, because she sings before.
Yes, she does.
The reason this transcends that, or maybe doesn't, or falls lower on our esteem, is the fact that there is a fictional montage of like home videos that they shot.
A fictional montage that uses young children playing young Alex and Mallory, who we've never seen before in 7 seasons.
Now, to be fair, the actors who played young Alex and Mallory in seasons past have probably aged.
Aged, right. And then in the very same film montage, we see current Alex, Mallory, and Jennifer, which made no sense. I thought it was like a home movie from a period of time, and it's really a trip down sort of kind of memory lane, and not maybe short-term and long-term memory lane.
Yeah, in this montage, they invented the Wonder Years. The schmaltz, the home movie 16mm quality thing, and
right before it starts, they reference, for Andy's sake, John Lennon and the Beatles.
She's like, Elise goes, I think it was either the philosopher Kierkegaard or perhaps John Lennon who said, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." And then he's like, "Who's John Lennon?" And then Michael Gross is like, "Oh, he was in the Beatles." And then they're like, "Oh gosh, how time marches on. Hey, remember that time in episode 10 when all you shitty kids hated A Hard Day's Night? I didn't forget that."
And now they sing. What did they sing? In Your Life? Is that what they're singing? In My Life?
In My Life.
In My Life.
Yeah.
And so they sing. Elise cracks out the old acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Steven sidles up next to her on the love seat or the ottoman or wherever the fuck they're sitting. And she sings, and he sings an off-key bass line with a lot of oohing. And it's really off. It is off. It's terrible. And then we see a home movie montage of people we've never seen before for a while. And then people we have seen before. It's just, and it takes us to the end of the episode. And I wish it didn't, but it did.
The other thing I want to say about the child actors in the montage playing Alex and Mallory, now in 1988, Are we to presume that there were no boys who had brown hair in the valley?
They got a towhead. They got a blonde for that. It was, oh God.
Like Michael J. Fox has had brown hair for as long as we've known him.
Right, we've never seen him without it. And they try this whenever they get Ernest on the show. Whenever they get Ernest, God, that is the biggest mistake you can ever make on television, is being earnest. You know, if you just have a snarky sarcasm, you'll get along with everybody. But when you try and be earnest, it gets so, ugh, I couldn't watch it. It was just horrible.
Yeah, I found that in my own life. Just being snarky and insincere all the time is the best.
Yeah. Absolutely. It works. It makes things so much more interesting to be snarky and insincere.
Yeah. I sometimes snooze people on Facebook for being too sincere.
Oh, you know what? I criticize people all the time who are just students who are too earnest. And I'll tell them to their face now. Now it's like when I have acting.
What's happening? These are children.
Like, I know it's not the children, not the kids. I'm sorry, not my young children.
Oh.
My adult actors who I train at New York Film Academy. I will say to them, I may be the first person to tell you this in your life, but you're being too earnest about it. Have some sense of sarcasm about this business. Have some sense of humor about it. Please stop taking it so seriously. When you stop getting misty-eyed when you start talking about Lord of the Rings movies, you know, that's when I know you're in trouble. When really you start to get all watery. Oh my God! I just want to be a part of that. I want to touch Peter Jackson's long stringy hair. I want to be a part of it. It's like, you're just too earnest. Please stop it. Okay.
It's a gig. It's a gig.
And you know what? And you'll be lucky if you can get 1 or 2 lines on Fresh Off the Boat. Okay. So just count your blessings if that happens.
Right.
Boy, this episode really it put such a bad taste in my mouth by the end of this episode. It was so funny.
Speaking of bad taste in one's mouth, there's a weird joke that happens that was a sign of the times when they talk about beef jerky, a thing that one eats during camping, and Nick pulls out some turkey jerky, and the audience finds the premise of turkey jerky.
Yeah. I turned to Susanna and I said, "Are you shitting me?" They think turkey jerky is a hilarious. I guess it sounded funny at the time,
right? Like sushi or sardines on pizza,
right? It's just sort of like, wow, that's so commonplace now, turkey jerky. That was really. I'm so glad you mentioned it. I forgot to write that down, but I was stunned by that.
Yeah, I went up to on the 4th of July this past year. I took a train up to Beacon, New York, where Pete Seeger used to live.
Sure.
And there was this store, because nothing was open. It was the 4th of July.
There's a jerky store?
Yeah, there's a jerky store. And I got alligator. I think I got venison. I got all kinds of stuff.
One of my favorite places to stop when I take the back roads to Vegas, from the valley to Vegas, is a jerky stand in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And they've got alligator and snake jerky and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. Hey,
we've gotten through the entire show without mentioning to everybody that Scott didn't have the time to do this. Anyway,
yeah, if you're joining us for the first time, I don't want to say usually, but there's sometimes a third host
who I understand though. Recently, he was able to carve out 3.5 hours for a hike with his wife.
I mean, family together time, as we see in this episode, is an important thing.
It is. And yet, I'm looking at this, Paul, and I'm calculating that this took us about 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's about our normal runtime.
It took about 40 minutes. So he could have carved out 40 minutes from that 3.5 hour hike to have done maybe this. Huh?
Let me tell you something. Walking uphill in rocks is not as fun as talking to you.
I you know what? As my mother used to say whenever she would explore nature, if you've seen one rock, you've seen them all. Or as she once said another time in her incredible sensitivity, it's a tree. I think that was in response to General Sherman's tree at Sequoia National Forest.
Oh my God.
It's a tree.
They're gorgeous. Those trees are amazing.
You know, when I went to the Grand Canyon, I had not been to the Grand Canyon until almost about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I'd never gone there. And when I drove to the Grand Canyon, I was stunned by how grand it was. I mean, truly, that was my only response was, oh my goodness, now I know why it's called the Grand Canyon. And the reason why I was stunned was my parents had visited the Grand Canyon 25 years ago, and my mother did come home and said, if you've seen one rock, you've seen them all.
Oh,
that was the Grand Canyon.
That doesn't even make sense. It would have made more sense if she said, if you've seen one hole, you've seen it. Seen
no,
them all.
It was a rock. It was just a rock to her. It was a big, giant rock. It was a rock with a hole in the middle of it. It's just quite amazing. And then you go there and it's like, as the sun is setting, you're like, oh my God, it's just, wow, I can't believe this exists. It's just crazy. It looks different from anything I've ever seen before in my whole life. If you've seen one rock, take me to an outlet mall. That's nature to me.
Wow. Good gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Did she listen to music? Does she listen to music?
Oh, she's demented now, so no, she doesn't.
Okay. Did she used to like music?
No, not at all.
See, that's the thing. I feel like there's a thing with people that don't like music, that there's a very like literal mindedness.
Probably.
I don't know.
Music is sort of there's a lyrical nature. I mean, obviously there's lyrics, but there's a poetic nature. There's a lot of different art involved in music besides, you know, the composing of it, the tune, the lyrics, the rhythms. You know, there's a lot of the orchestration of it. There's a lot of things that are artistic that go into music. So, I mean, she has no appreciation of anything artistic.
But you guys are getting along now, right?
And no, she's 94, and God, she's a lost cause.
Welcome back to season 7, folks.
Yeah. If I could just shed a little bit more sunshine on everyone.
Corey, I have to say, though, coming back for season 7, I know that we have, like, you know, half a year's worth of episodes to go, but, like, it felt like a weight has lifted a little bit.
It does. I do see light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, there is that. So,
yeah.
So I'm a bit more sunshiny. So yeah. I won't rip the show. And I look forward to next week and think, you know, I can look at those. The 3 kids look good. So I'll look at them again next week.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And they were the best part of the episode. When the parents weren't there, I really enjoyed the dynamic between the 4 characters, Jennifer, Mallory, Alex, and Nick. I thought as adults, they were like compelling characters to interact together.
I did. I like the fact that they were all mature. They were all adults. There was no Andrew in the scene. By the way, it was also one of the rare times that we've seen Elise and Steven parenting Andrew.
Yes, they finally got off their ass and parented their kids.
Wow, I thought, well, it's a good time. Maybe they can bond.
Yeah. All right, so let's get out of here. What do you think?
That's it. Perfect.
Rate and review our show on iTunes. Come on, there's only like 26 more of these. For questions and comments, email us at qualitytimewithfamilyties@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at QTWFT for updates, and you can follow each of us. I'm at Paul Packler.
I'm at Corpep, and Scott, who you haven't met for a while, is at Scott. That's a Follow Jones. That's it, at Follow Jones.
Yes. And you can like us on Facebook. We'd like to thank our host and producer, Barbara Dillon at Fanbase Press. Fanbase Press is a comic book publisher and online community that supports creators and fans through daily reviews, interviews, and podcasts that span the pop culture spectrum. Check them out, fanbasepress.com. We'd like to thank Perry Adams, who beautifully performs Family Ties into our theme song without us. Check out Perry's website, perryadams.com. We'd like to thank Bryant Dillon, who created our fantastic drawing and artwork, as well as edits our show. Bryant is the president and co-founder of Fanbase Press. Follow him on Twitter at Comic Book Slayer. And finally, Sean Foster, Fanbase Press's graphic designer, for designing our logo. Gang, episode 2. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Sha-la-la-la.
Bye.
Bye.